There were moments in war where courage wasn't loud, wasn't chaotic, wasn't about kicking doors or rushing headfirst into danger, but instead silent, steady, precise, like the calm stillness before thunder. And on that freezing night in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, beneath a sky scattered with stars and the faint glow of the crescent moon, that kind of courage belonged to her. The name on her uniform read Reyes, but most people didn't call her that, because names didn't matter when you were the ghost the enemy feared. The SEAL teams called her 01, not because she was first, but because enemies spotted by her had 0 seconds left before a shot ended them. That night, the SEAL unit had been on a silent reconnaissance mission, one they expected to be simple. Track the movements of a high-value target, document his weapon transfers, then exfil quietly before anyone knew they were there. But missions had a habit of falling apart the moment you believed they'd go smoothly. And now they were pinned behind jagged rocks, overlooking a narrow valley, gunfire ripping through the mountain air, ricochets sparking against stone as 30 heavily armed fighters closed in from multiple angles. "We're surrounded." One of the SEALs muttered through gritted teeth, blood dripping down his arm as he pressed a gloved hand against a fresh bullet wound. No cover to move. No backup coming. "If we stay here, we're done." Another tried calling support over encrypted comms, but only static answered. Their signal was jammed. The squad leader, Lieutenant Carter, checked his men quickly. 3 were wounded, 2 critically, and the rest running low on ammo. They were elite, yes, hardened through training and combat, but even the toughest warriors knew math, and the math here was brutal. 30 enemies versus 8 exhausted SEALs with no backup meant the only outcome was death or capture. And capture wasn't an option. Carter exhaled slowly, steadying his breath because leaders didn't panic in front of their men, even when panic made sense. "Eyes up," he whispered, voice steady, calm, anchored. "We hold. We fight. No one dies without a fight." But deep inside, even he wondered if tonight was the night their story ended. And that's when a quiet female voice crackled through the radio, low, controlled, almost emotionless. "Carter, wind shifting from southwest, 7 knots. Do not move." You repeat, "Do not move." Every SEAL froze, not because of the danger, but because they recognized the voice. One of the men whispered, "No way she's here." Carter closed his eyes, not in fear, but in relief. 01, he murmured. "I thought command pulled you off this op." "Plans changed," she replied. There was a faint metallic click. They all knew the sound. A bolt sliding, a scope locking, a round chambering, a sniper preparing to work. "Position?" Carter asked quietly. Her response was calm, almost bored. "I've got overwatch on your 6 from elevation 400 meters out. Thermal confirms 30 hostiles, armed, spread formation. Range comfortable." Comfortable. To her, 400 meters in darkness with shifting wind was comfortable. Carter exhaled, tension bleeding from his shoulders. "Good to have you, Reyes." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "You'll hear the first shot in 3 seconds. After that, move only when I tell you." The radio fell silent. The world seemed to hold its breath. Carter glanced at his men and whispered, "This just became survivable." One of the younger SEALs swallowed hard. "Sir, is she really that good?" Carter didn't look at him. He just whispered, "She's better." And then, crack. The sound wasn't loud, not like in movies. Silencers didn't make rifles silent, but they softened the signature into something sharper, cleaner, colder. A heartbeat later, one of the enemy fighters collapsed. No scream, no struggle, just instantly lifeless. The others paused, confused at crack. Another dropped, this one mid-step, rifle slipping from his hand before his body hit the ground. 2, Reyes whispered softly, almost like she was counting puzzle pieces instead of lives. Confusion turned to fear among the enemy fighters as they looked around wildly, trying to locate a shooter they couldn't see. Carter watched through his NVEG and muttered, "She's already in a rhythm." Crack. 3. The enemy began spreading, moving to cover, but that only made them predictable. Targets with patterns. Crack. 4. Her voice stayed calm, steady, detached. She wasn't angry. She wasn't excited. She was focused, working like a surgeon with a rifle carved from precision and discipline. One of the SEALs whispered, "How is she seeing them? They're behind trees and rocks." Carter shook his head. "She doesn't see what they are. She sees what will expose them." The enemy finally began firing back, but not at the SEALs. They were shooting blindly into the mountains, terrified. Panic was spreading. Reyes continued firing. With every breath, another life ended. She didn't double tap. She didn't miss. She didn't hesitate. Crack. 5. Crack. 6. One fighter attempted to flank, sprinting low and fast. He made it 20 steps. Crack. 7. The wind shifted again, and she compensated instantly, like she and the environment were speaking the same language. Crack. 8. The enemy leader shouted orders in panic, voice cracking with fear. "Sniper! Sniper! Move!" Crack. 9. By now, the remaining fighters abandoned formation and scrambled for escape routes, firing wildly just to feel like they weren't helpless. But Reyes was emotionless. She tracked, adjusted, fired, and spoke each number softly like an executioner reading names off a list. Crack. 10. Carter finally spoke into comms. "Give me a status." A faint breath, the only sign she was human. 10 confirmed. Remaining 20 are repositioning. You'll shift in 20 seconds. Stand by. The SEALs waited because when a sniper like Reyes said stop, you stopped. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't improvising. She was calculating. Crack. 11. This one was moving fast, weaving side to side downhill. But Reyes knew how runners breathe, how momentum shifts, how legs load before a directional change, and she fired not where he was, but where he would be. Crack. 12. Bullets smacked the rocks inches from Carter's face, but not from Reyes. The remaining hostiles realized the only advantage the SEALs had was the unseen sniper, so they redirected fire upward, but too late. Reyes had already shifted elevation and was gone from the shot they assumed she was still firing from. Crack. 13. Carter finally saw her, just barely, a shadow on a ridgeline high above, lying motionless, rifle steady, breath invisible, presence nearly supernatural. She was small compared to most operators, 5 feet 6 inches, lean, compact, but skill had nothing to do with size. She had earned respect not because she wanted it, but because she made survival possible. Crack. 14. Her voice returned. "Carter, you're going to move your team 30 meters northwest to the dried creek bed when I say go. Do not hesitate. You'll have a 5-second window." Carter nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "Copy." "Reloading," she murmured, and even during that 2-second silence, the battlefield felt louder, more dangerous. Then another click, and the countdown resumed. Crack. 15. Her tone never changed. No ego, no adrenaline, no rush of victory. Just the calm certainty of someone who understood death intimately. "Stand by, wait. Go." The 8 SEALs sprinted from cover, dragging wounded teammates, gear rattling, boots crunching on gravel. For 5 seconds, the world exploded with enemy fire, tracers streaking through darkness, but not a single round touched them. Because Reyes wasn't just shooting enemies. She was suppressing angles, timing shots between their reloads, eliminating the ones who could hit her team. By the time they slid into the dried creek bed, every SEAL was breathing hard but alive. "Status?" Carter asked, still scanning. Reyes responded instantly. 15 down. 15 left. They're scattering. Some regrouping near the ridge, others attempting retreat. One SEAL laughed breathlessly. "She's taking out an army." Carteranser Guayeti. No. "She's preventing ours from dying." The enemy fired RPGs wildly into the hills, explosions lighting the sky like violent fireworks. But their fear made them reckless, and reckless meant predictable. Reyes adjusted her scope, breath steady, heart rate controlled. Crack. 16. A fighter carrying the RPG dropped before he could reload. His partner froze. Crack. 17. Silence followed, brief, fragile. Then came shouting from the remaining fighters, panicked voices cracking with fear. The SEALs listened, understanding even if they didn't speak the language. "We are fighting a ghost." Reyes continued working to crack. 18. Crack. 19. A cluster of remaining fighters began retreating toward a narrow escape path. She anticipated it before Carter even noticed. They're falling back to exfil Route B. I'll cut them off. She shifted position, not rushed, not frantic, just efficient. Even her movements seemed calculated to avoid unnecessary sound. Crack. 20. Crack. 21. Now, the survivors weren't fighting. They were running, dropping weapons, abandoning gear, desperate to escape a threat they couldn't see. But Reyes didn't have orders to let them escape. Carter gave the words softly, "Finish it." Reyes breathed once, quiet, controlled. Copy. Crack. 22. Crack. 23. Crack. 24. One SEAL whispered, "How does someone learn to shoot like that?" Carter answered, "She didn't learn. She became." Reyes scanned, exhaled slowly, then fired again. Crack. 25. Another tried ducking behind rock cover, but Reyes waited. She knew patience killed just as effectively as bullets. We leaned to look. Crack. 26. For enemies remained, desperate, terrified, firing blindly at shadows. One attempted to flank downhill and slipped on loose gravel, dropping his weapon. Crack. 27. Another tried using a hostage tactic, dragging one of his own wounded fighters in front of him as a shield while backing away. Reyes didn't hesitate. Crack. 28. Two left. The battlefield was silent now. Not the chaotic silence of battle lull, but a heavy, fearful silence where death lingered close enough to breathe. Reyes adjusted one last time. Crack. 29. The last enemy dropped his weapon, hands shaking, shouting surrender into the night. Carter keyed his mic hold. Reyes paused, not because she needed to, but because Carter gave a command. The lone fighters stumbled backward, desperate to run, desperate for a chance to survive what had become a one-sided execution. Carter exhaled. Negative. He'll rearm or warn others. Take the shot. A heartbeat passed, then crack. 30. Silence. Real silence. The battlefield that moments ago held chaos now held only cold wind and the distant sound of shifting gravel. Reyes finally spoke. Not with emotion, not with pride, but with calm finality. Area clear. The SEALs sat back, breathing out the fear, adrenaline, uncertainty they had suppressed to survive. One whispered, "We should be dead." Another corrected softly, "We would be, if not for her." Carter finally spoke. "Reyes, good work." Her response was quiet. "It's never good work, just necessary." There was something heavy in those words. Experience, loss, the knowledge that precision and skill couldn't erase the burden of taking 30 lives. They began moving toward extraction while Reyes provided silent overwatch, ensuring no survivors returned to ambush them. When the helicopter finally arrived, rotors cutting through cold mountain air, Reyes joined them at the landing zone. She walked with the silent confidence of someone who didn't need to prove herself, someone who already had. The younger SEALs turned to stare, some with awe, some disbelief, but she ignored it. Attention meant nothing. Results meant everything. Carter approached her. "You saved 8 lives tonight." Reyes shrugged slightly. "That's the job." One of the injured SEALs looked up at her from the stretcher and whispered, voice shaky, "Thank you." Reyes finally paused, just long enough to meet his eyes, and nodded once. "Anytime." As they boarded the helicopter, wind whipping their gear and loose dust into the air, Carter turned to her again. "You know," he said with a small smile, "if you ever decide to brag, tonight would be a decent time." Reyes smirked, barely noticeable. "If I bragged every time I saved SEALs, I'd never stop talking." The team laughed, relief mixing with admiration as the helicopter lifted off, the mountains shrinking below them. The SEALs finally let themselves breathe, not because the danger was gone, but because they survived it. Reyes sat near the rear door, rifle across her lap, eyes still scanning the darkness even though the mission was over. She wasn't thinking about the shots. She wasn't thinking about the praise. She was thinking about the next mission, because somewhere, someday, another team would get pinned down, another impossible situation would unfold, Another moment would demand calm in the chaos. And when that day came, she would be ready. Because she wasn't just a sniper. She wasn't just elite. She was the unseen shield, the silent guardian, the kind of warrior who didn't need recognition, only purpose. And as the helicopter carried them towards safety, she finally spoke, not to the team, but into her own recorder, completing the calm ritual she always performed after missions. Mission complete. 30 hostiles neutralized. 0 friendly casualties. Then, almost as an afterthought, soft, distant, but genuine, she added, "And thank you for watching her brave stories." If you're listening to this, make sure you subscribe because more stories like this one are coming. And tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Your support keeps these stories alive. The recording clicked off, the night carried on, and somewhere in the darkness, another target list was already waiting for her name.